This video is brought to you by Surfshark. Stick around to hear more about the discount that they're providing to the entire upper echelon community. Alright, today we're going to talk about Netflix because yesterday Bloomberg broke a story suggesting that Netflix will be offering video games on their platform as early as this coming year. That's no small thing. I can't even count the number of times I've heard this will be the Netflix of gaming as companies roll out streaming services or subscription model packages for video game content, but honestly, pretty much all of them suck. They're not the Netflix of anything. They're just a service with overpriced content, too much latency, or a fundamental redundancy that makes them worse in almost every conceivable metric when compared to simple digital ownership on a local platform. The one exception would be Game Pass. Game Pass is probably the leader in the video game subscription arena right now. As of April 2021, it had over 23 million users signed up actively, and their model also avoids the ridiculously annoying pitfall of streaming services, because with Game Pass, you download the games from a central library, and if you don't have the subscription anymore, you can't play. It doesn't try to have you stream out of a remote location. It doesn't try to become an entirely new platform in and of itself, like Stadia did, but more on that disaster later. And it provides hundreds of games, literally hundreds, backed by decades of industry-leading experience through Microsoft. Game Pass has value. It's got everything going for it. Instead of trying to isolate, compete, or replace, Game Pass is a step towards synchronizing multiple platforms with cross-play, cross-save, and a cohesive experience all throughout Microsoft's infrastructure. I'm a fan of Game Pass, if you can't tell already, because it has unparalleled value from a simple dollars and cents perspective. Literally hundreds of games for $10 a month, more for the Ultimate package, more than $10 a month I mean, but when you look at the library, it could cost $20, $25 easily and still be a pretty justifiable price tag. Basically, Game Pass is good, and no, I'm not sponsored by them. This video is sponsored by someone else actually, but it's genuinely a decent service that's trying to provide value for the customer. Now, Game Pass might be the undisputed king of value right now, but it definitely isn't alone in the space. PlayStation has a game subscription package backed by their heavy emphasis on exclusive titles. It's not nearly as popular in terms of subscriber metrics at the moment, but it's not going to disappear or anything anytime soon. And then we move on to third parties. What I mean by third parties is that they aren't an actual hardware publisher themselves. They're simply trying to break into the subscription model space for video games, and most of them are failing. NVIDIA GeForce Now, Amazon Luna, Shadow.tech, AntStream, whatever that is, and Google Stadia. None of these services are succeeding all that well. Shadow at least had a full Windows PC interface you could stream to and had a great price point, but then it got bought out, and now under new management it seems decidedly worse, so not a good sign. NVIDIA GeForce Now was cool, but then they ran into serious problems with licensing agreements, and Stadia is a total unmitigated disaster. Alright, before going any further, it's the moment where I advertise a highly valuable service, and I get paid to do it. Surfshark is a VPN, and funny story, recently for a topic I started to explore the dark web, which you absolutely do not want to do without a VPN. Surfshark does a number of different things. One, it can bypass regional censorship simply by flipping your geographic location. On top of that, it will help you circumvent location-specific licensing contracts, which will mean a much larger amount of content on a site like Netflix. And even more, you can protect yourself from data harvesting and collection tactics that are perpetrated by technology companies all around the world. VPNs don't just protect your IP, as many people believe, they protect your entire online experience. These are just a few of the benefits when it comes to a VPN, and like I said, I was just using Surfshark the other day to explore an incredibly interesting but terrifying part of the internet. I won't go any more in-depth than that at this point in time, sorry. I'm happy to say that Surfshark is offering 83% off and 3 full months free if you click the link down below and use promo code Echelon. Again, that's 83% off and 3 full months free using the link down below in the description and code Echelon. Big thank you to them for sponsoring the channel. So why is Stadia a disaster? Because understanding that is important before understanding why Netflix is also probably going to suck. The short answer is that streaming latency is a really hard thing to overcome, and an incredibly annoying thing to deal with for most titles, but the longer answer revolves around their pricing model for on-platform titles, their inability or flat-out unwillingness to allow for cross-platform library usage. If you played Destiny, as an example, you would have to literally buy the game again on Stadia and then play it on a worse platform than before, creating severe matchmaking concerns. And lastly, their failed endeavor to bring their own games to market while simultaneously trying to replace or at least break into the gaming console space. Stadia is a well-known disaster that is still sort of limping along, but no doubt it will join the long and ever-expanding list of dead Google products in the very near future. However, Stadia and Netflix probably aren't going to be all that different. Here's the problem. I may not know exactly what a Netflix gaming section would look like, but we can infer several things from the recent news. For starters, it would be reasonable to assume that Netflix will have game streaming, right? That's probably going to be the case because otherwise they would be expecting their user base to have or buy hardware capable of playing the game locally. That's not going to spur high adoption metrics, and it's not going to attract new people to the platform. They're trying to get gamers to sign up for Netflix since their entire business model is predicated on user acquisition above all else, but gamers by and large already have their hardware and already play their own games. Gaming isn't an emerging space, it's already mainstream. When Netflix first got started, there was no video streaming. Well, there was, but not nearly in the same way, and not with a refined and user-friendly experience, especially. In fact, when Netflix first got started, they were still sending physical DVDs to people in the mail. Movie streaming was a space they helped revolutionize, but gaming? Not a chance. The second thing we can infer is that they seem like they intend to offer their own video games, for gaming to become its own category, and this is a quote, kind of like comedy specials or Netflix documentaries, which are produced in-house, and the documentaries at least are pretty damn good for the most part. That implies that they will have exclusive in-house video games as well. That's probably going to be a disaster, at least in my opinion, and we actually do have examples to draw from. Amazon, which has its own video game streaming service called Luna, which I don't believe is doing very well at all. And also, if you can hear that in the background, my neighbor decides to do laundry every single time I record, so that's fun. Amazon has tried to produce notable video games on 2 separate occasions, maybe more, but if so, I literally haven't even heard of them, and both of these have been a complete disaster. For starters, Crucible was a hero shooter that got released and then unreleased, I'm not kidding, because it sucked so bad and failed so hard. I had fun with it, but it's hard to picture a more generic and uninteresting game when you look at the wider hero shooter market. Then there's New World. New World is actually something I'm going to play heavily on release and have an upper echelon guild to take over territory. It's an MMORPG, and MMORPGs are kind of my bread and butter. I have high hopes for it, but even if it's good, when it launches, we need to remember that it's been delayed multiple times for a total of over a year, and had it released in the state it was in and intended to release back then, during early 2020 I believe, it would have been dead on arrival. Like I said, I'm rooting for New World. I intend to play it. If you want to join the Upper Echelon Company, there's a link down below to our Discord server with a New World channel in it. Just shameless plug there. And it's one I'm excited for, but it's not a strong showing from a big company with no gaming experience, launching its own titles. Then there's Stadia. Stadia, through Google, and by the way, Amazon or Google are not small companies. They have as many resources as anyone out there, any company in the world, to devote to game development and publication. Anyways, Stadia just failed so hard flat out they shut down their own development studios. That's sort of the whole story. I mean, not completely, but that's kind of all you need to know. Stadia was just terrible, and their development just failed. Netflix probably isn't going to have a similar structure when compared to Game Pass. We have to keep that in mind, which means it won't be localized file downloads. They will have all of the problems of current generation streaming tech, all of the problems a fresh company with no gaming experience will inevitably run into, and they're trying to appeal to a market that isn't just established, it's entrenched. The console wars are a real thing. Don't ask me why, but gaming communities have an extreme degree of loyalty. If you want a casual, no-strings-attached gaming experience to travel with or something like that, that's Nintendo Switch. If you want some of the best unique titles, that's PlayStation. If you want the best value, that's Game Pass on Xbox. And then there's PC users who could not care less what a service like Netflix does because they have a PC. Netflix has brought on an executive from Facebook who helped with Oculus Rift gaming transfers, so VR, even though VR is kind of a narrow sliver of the gaming space right now. And after that, they worked for EA. Keep that in mind, they worked for EA. So they have experience at least in one way, but there's a much more sinister angle here. A while ago, I covered a service called Venue. Venue is designed, I'm not kidding right now, to monitor your living room, count the number of people watching the movie or show or whatever it is, and revoke your access if there are too many faces in the room. That's legitimately what it is. That's the type of goal that these companies have, and that's not isolated either. Google Stadia Pro, not that it's competitive or even relevant in gaming, it's a joke, but Google Stadia Pro will soon be giving developers a cut of revenue based on how long players engage with their game. That's fundamentally broken because games are not the same as television episodes or movies and cannot be judged on the same scale. Short games will be intrinsically penalized, and instead of pushing for a quality experience, right, above all other things, it will incentivize addiction methods and predatory systems. EA already does things like this. They manipulate their games and gameplay systems, they have patents for this even, public ones, to keep people online. They use addictive methods like loot boxes especially, or surprise mechanics, and they even had a document leak recently showing that they deliberately drive people into the Ultimate Team mode so that they will get hooked on the loot boxes and not stop playing. Well, guess who Netflix just hired? An executive from EA. The problem here is that Netflix isn't going to have the same methodology that the gaming community is used to, and their methodology is probably going to be decidedly worse. As the streaming industry pushes towards longer engagement, effectively competing with a wider and wider set of services and activities in the process, they want your time. Netflix doesn't care if it's a movie or a show, a documentary or a game. They just want you to have their service and use it the most. As the push heads further and further towards watch time as a primary metric, it will probably degrade the quality of games. Also, one last thing here. Game streaming impacts longevity. If you have a movie that you like, it's possible to acquire the file or screen record or any number of things, and once you have it, physical disc, digital file, who cares, you can watch it anytime you want. There's a preservation aspect, if you will. The same is mostly true for older video games, where you would have the disc and you might lose an online component, but for the most part it would still work. But that's not true with streaming services. How often does your favorite TV show, or at least a TV show you really like, get canceled? When it's canceled, you can at least watch old episodes, correct? But there's no more new stuff, which is fair. Well, think about when Netflix sees that X, Y, or Z game has bad watch time, or playtime rather. What happens when they decide, nope, not worth it? Everyone playing that game, or who still enjoys that game, loses all progress, all access, and all ability to log into the servers ever again because it's streamed, it's always online, it's housed far away on separate servers, and there wasn't enough playtime, so Netflix canceled it. Playing a game on Netflix is quite possibly going to become a crapshoot, hoping that it stays one of their most popular titles consistently, or it might just get shut down. It's entirely probable that they will resort to unsavory tactics in their pursuit of user acquisition and especially maximized playtime. And they will face all the intrinsic problems of streaming, fresh development initiatives, everything else that comes with it. And the bottom line is, the Netflix of games, a statement echoed over and over and over for the past few years, is about to be Netflix itself, finally, and that absolutely sucks. That's it. Hopefully it doesn't happen soon, doesn't happen at all, or at least diverges from what is most likely going to occur because the current blueprint isn't all that appealing. If you want support, there are links down below, primarily Odyssey, which is a YouTube platform alternative for anyone interested. Locals, $5 a month for completely ad-free versions of all the videos, as well as the audio podcast format. Merch, another gaming YouTuber to check out, who will also be covering New World, I believe, when it comes out extensively. Social media, etc., but I'll just cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.